At exactly 3:00 a.m., Max the Petersons' faithful German shepherd stirred from his spot near the nursery. Something in the air had shifted, something only he could sense. Without hesitation, he crept into baby Emma's room, gently tugged her blanket in his jaws, and began dragging her from the crib. Upstairs, Sarah and Mark were startled awake by faint rustling on the baby monitor. Rushing downstairs, they were stunned to find Max standing in the front yard, Emma safe in his mouth. It looked like madness, but in truth, it was instinct. A life-saving warning only Max understood. As Sarah and Mark rushed after Max, their bare feet hit the cold hardwood floor in a panic. Sarah gasped when she saw the crib empty, but there was no time to scream. Max stood in the hallway, his strong frame bent slightly as he gently dragged baby Emma, wrapped snugly in her blanket, toward the front door. Mark's voice cracked as he called out, "Max, stop!" But the dog didn't listen. His eyes were sharp, his body coiled with urgency. Without hesitation, Max barked once loud and commanding, then bolted down the hall. Confused and terrified, the parents chased him into the living room, and that's when they smelled it, a faint, acrid odor in the air smoke. Mark turned toward the kitchen and froze. Flickers of orange light danced against the cabinets. Flames were creeping fast. Max hadn't lost control. He'd seen the danger long before they did, and he was already saving their child. As Mark and Sarah followed Max to the front yard, the cold night air hit them like a wall. Mark clutched baby Emma tightly, her tiny body stirring beneath the blanket, unaware of the danger they had just escaped. Sarah's eyes widened in horror as she turned to look back at their home. Thick, dark smoke was now pouring from the kitchen window. The flicker of fire had grown into raging flames, licking at the curtains. Her hand flew to her mouth. "He saved her," she whispered. Max stood in the middle of the yard, chest heaving, eyes locked on the house, still on high alert. This wasn't just luck. Max had sensed the fire before the alarms, before the smoke, before any human could. His instincts had driven him to act without hesitation. That night, they didn't just escape a fire, they witnessed what true loyalty looked like in the form of 4 legs and a beating heart. Neighbors began stepping out into the cool early morning, drawn by the smoke and flashing lights. One woman clutched her robe as she watched firefighters race toward the house. "I thought I was dreaming," she whispered. Another neighbor voice, trembling, added, "I saw your dog dragging something." Then the smoke came pouring out. Mark and Sarah could barely speak, overwhelmed by the realization that Max had done more than just bark or whine. He had acted with purpose. Emergency crews worked quickly, containing the flames to the kitchen. The rest of the home, though smoke damaged, was spared. Emma was checked by medics and found to be safe, scared, but unharmed. Max stood quietly by her side, his chest rising and falling with exhaustion, his eyes still scanning the crowd. One firefighter knelt beside him, stroking his fur. "You've got a real hero here," he said, with a nod. Sarah knelt next to Max, tears in her eyes, whispering into his ear, "You saved our baby. You saved all of us." That morning, as the sun rose over their soot-stained home, the Petersons knew one truth above all else: no matter what they'd lost, they still had each other. And they owed it all to their loyal dog. As the last flames were extinguished, the Petersons stood wrapped in blankets on the front lawn, hearts still pounding. The early dawn air was brisk, maybe 50 degrees, but they barely noticed the chill. Max, the German shepherd who had saved them, stood between Mark and Sarah, tail wagging gently, eyes watchful. A firefighter approached and knelt beside him, offering a hand. "This dog didn't just act on instinct," he said. "He understood what was at stake." Sarah hugged Emma close, her voice cracking as she whispered, "You're our angel, Max." Word of Max's heroic actions quickly spread among the neighbors. Some came with coffee, others with tears in their eyes. No one looked at him as just a dog anymore. He was family, a guardian who saw danger before any alarm could sound. And in a moment that could have ended in tragedy, Max had made sure his family saw the sunrise together. As the sun rose higher, casting golden light over the still smoking roof, the full weight of what had nearly happened began to settle in. Mark gently placed Emma on a soft patch of grass, checking her tiny hands and rosy cheeks. She was safe. Sarah knelt beside Max, her fingers buried in his thick fur, whispering soft words of thanks through quiet sobs. Around them, neighbors gathered in pajamas and robes, drawn by sirens and the scent of smoke. One elderly woman said, "I thought it was strange seeing your dog dragging something. But then I saw the fire." The truth stunned them all. Max had acted long before any human sensed danger. No smoke alarm had gone off. No one had smelled anything yet. But Max knew, and he didn't hesitate. His courage and love had protected the most vulnerable member of the family. That morning, he didn't just save a child. He saved a future. By the time firefighters had the blaze under control, the Petersons stood barefoot on the dewy lawn, huddled together beneath a neighbor's blanket. Emma, still wrapped in her singed baby blanket, cooed softly in Mark's arms. Max stood watch beside them, his chest rising and falling with exhaustion. Yet his gaze never left the house. A firefighter knelt beside him, gently patting his side. "Smartest dog I've ever seen," he said, tipping his helmet. Around them, neighbors shared stories of what they'd witnessed, how Max had carried the baby, how he refused to let anyone stop him. Sarah knelt beside her dog, tears streaking her soot-covered cheeks. "You saved our daughter," she whispered, her voice trembling. For Max, there were no medals or speeches, only the quiet joy of knowing his family was safe. And for the Petersons, the message was simple. Some angels come with 4 legs and fur. As the sun began to rise, painting the sky in soft hues of orange and gold, the Peterson family remained on their front lawn, shaken but safe. Emergency crews worked quickly, dousing the last flames, while neighbors offered blankets and warm coffee. One elderly neighbor, voice trembling, said, "I thought your dog was dragging the baby out, but then I saw the smoke." He knew. Sarah turned to Max, her fingers brushing through his thick fur. His tail thumped weakly, still alert, despite the long night. Mark knelt beside them, tears welling in his eyes. "Without Max, we wouldn't be standing here," he said quietly. The house could be rebuilt, but their daughter was irreplaceable. And it was Max, not a smoke alarm or luck, who gave them that second chance. For everyone watching, it became clear Max wasn't just a dog. He was a guardian, a blessing wrapped in fur, and a hero in every sense. As firefighters finished their work, one of them, grizzled and gray-haired, knelt beside Max and gently stroked his head. "You're one smart dog," he said, his voice thick with admiration. Max stood quietly, chest rising and falling with fatigue, but his eyes stayed sharp still, watching over his family. For Mark and Sarah, the weight of the night began to sink in. The fire had gutted their kitchen, but their child was alive. Their home was damaged, but their hearts were whole. Max had sensed the danger before anyone else, not because he was trained, but because he loved. Sarah knelt beside him, her hand resting gently on his back. "You didn't just save Emma," she whispered. "You saved us all." Around them, neighbors offered warm smiles and quiet nods. In a world filled with headlines of tragedy, Max reminded everyone that sometimes the purest kind of hero walks on four legs and expects nothing in return but love. As the morning sun rose, casting a warm golden light across the lawn, the Peterson family stood together, wrapped in blankets, hearts still racing, but full of gratitude. Max sat beside them, his thick coat singed at the edges, his breathing steady but tired. To the world, he was a German shepherd, but to Sarah and Mark, he had become something more, a guardian angel in fur. Neighbors came by, offering coffee coats in quiet awe. One elderly man whispered, "That dog knew." He knew before any alarm did. Firefighters confirmed that if Max hadn't acted when he did, the fire could have trapped them all within minutes. Sarah hugged Max tightly, tears falling onto his fur. "You're not just our pet," she said softly. "You're the reason our family is still whole." And Max, loyal as ever, leaned into her side, content, loved, and forever a hero in the eyes of the family he saved. This story reminds us that true loyalty often comes without words, and that instinct, especially from those we love, should never be ignored. Max the German Shepherd didn't just sense danger. He acted with unwavering courage, even when no one else saw the signs. For older generations who understand the quiet power of devotion, this tale is a powerful reminder. Sometimes protection comes in the form of a silent companion who stays watchful while we sleep. It teaches us to listen, not only with our ears, but with our hearts, and to always value the bonds that protect and guide us.